Most people who watch a Michael Jordan highlight reel see the hang time, the tongue, the logo. What they don't see is what made all of it possible. A workout so specific, so deliberately designed, that Tim Grover said it was completely different from the way anyone else was training. That's not a marketing line. Grover wrote it in his own book. And in the last video, we covered the Breakfast Club, the 5 a.m. sessions, the philosophy behind why Jordan trained before anyone else was awake. If you haven't watched that, it's worth going back. But there's a question that video didn't fully answer. What exactly happened during those sessions? Not the mindset, the actual work, the exercises, the structure, the order, and the one piece of the program that Grover himself says most people still completely miss. Stay with this until the end, because the last exercise in Jordan's program is the strangest one, and it's probably the one you need most. Here's where Grover started, not with Jordan's arms, not with his chest, with the part of the body that coaches and trainers were largely ignoring in the late 1980s, the core. And before you check out, this isn't about crunches. Grover was explicit about this. He wrote that many athletes do hundreds of crunches and neglect their obliques and erector muscles entirely. A six-pack does not equal a strong core. Those are two different things. What Grover meant by core was the entire trunk functioning as a single unit. The abs, yes, but also the obliques on the sides, the erectors running up the lower back, and the deep stabilizers that never show in a mirror and almost never get trained. Together they form the structure that transfers force from the legs to the arms. Without that structure, you're just moving weight from one place to another. With it, every other muscle in your body becomes more powerful. Grover put it this way: if your core is strong, all of your muscles can produce more force and perform at a higher level. So Jordan trained core 2 days a week, not every day, and this matters. Your abs and obliques are muscles, the same as your chest or biceps. They need recovery. 2 to 3 times a week, like Jordan did, is the correct amount. Daily core work is one of the most common training mistakes there is. The exercises: medicine ball sit-ups, push-ups with hands on a physio ball, leg raises, and calf raises. 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps each. Now here's what's interesting about that list. None of those exercises are impressive. None of them look like what a champion should be doing. They look like what a physical therapist gives a patient. That's the point. Grover wasn't building a body for the mirror. He was building a structure that could absorb contact, generate power, and hold up over 82 games a season. The exercises are boring by design. The results are not. 3 days a week, the program shifted to strength. And this is where the documented exercises start to look more recognizable. Deadlifts, power cleans, bench press, good mornings, standing dumbbell presses, bicep curls, squats. 3 to 5 sets, 4 to 8 reps each. Low rep, heavy, full recovery between sets. There's a reason for that rep range that most recreational programs get completely wrong. When you train in the 4 to 8 rep range with heavy compound movements, you're primarily training the nervous system, specifically its ability to recruit as many muscle fibers as possible in a single effort. That's different from the pump you feel at 12 to 15 reps, which is more about metabolic stress and muscle swelling. Jordan needed to produce maximum force in a fraction of a second. A crossover move, a box out, absorbing a hard foul and landing without crumbling. That requires neurological efficiency, not just muscle size. The low-rep compound work built that. But there are 2 exercises in that list that deserve more attention than the others. The first is the good morning. Almost nobody does good mornings. They look unusual, they feel awkward, and they target the posterior chain, the hamstrings, glutes, and lower back erectors, which are muscles that don't get attention because they don't face the mirror. But the posterior chain is the engine behind every explosive movement a human body makes. Sprinting, jumping, changing direction, absorbing impact, all of it runs through the posterior chain. Grover knew this. Most weekend programs ignore it entirely. The second exercise worth stopping on is the squat on a balance board. Grover didn't have Jordan squat on solid ground. He placed him on an unstable surface, held the bottom position, and then pressed up. The reason is mechanical. Squatting on a balance board forces constant micro-adjustments from every stabilizing muscle in the lower body and core simultaneously. The ankle stabilizers, the knee stabilizers, the hip stabilizers, muscles that never fire during a standard squat, are now required to work. Grover called these the neutralizers and stabilizers, and he said explicitly that while most programs were targeting major muscle groups, his program was also emphasizing these smaller muscles so that everything worked together. That distinction is what separated Jordan's body from other elite athletes who were training hard but training conventionally. Now here's the open question in all of this, and it's one Grover has raised but never fully explained. He wrote that Jordan lifted on game days, which in the late 1980s was considered insane. The conventional wisdom was that you rest before competition. You conserve energy. You don't load the muscles you're about to use. Grover rejected this. He argued that if you take off every game day across an 82-game season, that's a significant number of days you're not working those muscles correctly. His logic? Training became part of game preparation, the same way eating a certain way on game day is part of preparation. You don't skip your pre-game meal. You don't skip your training. The results suggest he was right. But the mechanism, exactly why game day training improved rather than hurt Jordan's performance, is something sports science is still working to fully explain. There are theories around nervous system priming, around muscle fiber activation, around the psychological effect of entering a game already warm and already working, but no clean answer. What Grover said was this: you cannot get extraordinary results from an ordinary workout. That's the principle. The science behind it is still being written. The third and final component is the one almost no breakdown of Jordan's program covers, and it may be the most important one for men over 30. After the core work and the strength work, Grover directed specific attention to the joints most programs never touch: wrists, fingers, ankles, toes. This is documented across multiple sources. Grover spent structured time in every session on what he called injury prevention work, exercises targeting the small joints that terminate every major movement chain in the body. Think about the mechanics. When Jordan drove to the basket and absorbed contact on landing, the force had to travel somewhere. It went through his ankles, through his knees, through his hips and spine. If any link in that chain was weak or unstable, the load transferred incorrectly, and injury followed. Grover strengthened every link, including the ones that look almost too small to bother with. Jordan played 82 games a season in arguably the most physically punishing era of NBA basketball, absorbing contact on almost every possession. He stayed healthy. That's not genetics. That's a program that took joint integrity seriously when no one else did. Here's what this means if you're not a professional basketball player. If you're 35 or 45 or 55, and your knees ache when you go downstairs, and your wrists feel stiff in the morning, and your ankles turn on uneven ground, there is a very good chance you have never once trained the muscles that protect those joints. You've trained the muscles that look good. You've trained the muscles that face the mirror. And you've left the structure underneath them completely unaddressed. That's not age. That's a gap in your training. And it's the same gap Grover identified in Michael Jordan in 1989. The fix isn't complicated. 10 minutes at the end of every session. Wrist circles under light load. Single leg balance work. Toe raises. Ankle rotations against resistance. Finger extension work. None of it looks impressive. All of it builds the foundation that keeps everything else working. Here's the full program as Grover documented it. Core days, twice a week. Medicine ball sit-ups, physio ball push-ups, leg raises, calf raises, 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps. Strength days, 3 times a week. Deadlifts, power cleans, bench press, good mornings, standing dumbbell press, bicep curls, balance board squats. 3 to 5 sets of 4 to 8 reps. Conditioning, twice a week. 5 400-meter sprints in week 1, 6 in week 2, with 3 minutes of recovery between each sprint. And after every session, the joints, wrists, ankles, fingers, toes, 10 minutes, non-negotiable. That's it. That's the program that built one of the most durable, explosive, structurally sound bodies in the history of professional sports. Not a supplement stack, not a machine circuit. Compound lifts, core stability, posterior chain work, and consistent attention to the parts of the body that everyone else was ignoring. Grover's own words from Jump Attack: you can't get extraordinary results from an ordinary workout. The ordinary workout is what most people are doing. This is the other one.